Hello and welcome to the Creative Connection podcast this day after Christmas. If that is something that you celebrate, I just want to adjust a couple of things here so that I'm not distracted by any other screens that pop up. This episode is pretty special to me. This time of year, there's always a shift in me, and I don't know if you feel this or not, but I thought I would share a little bit about shifts and what happens between Christmas and New Year's. So I'm entitling today's episode Empty Enough to Receive. And I'm really glad that you're here. And before we begin, I'd like you to slow down with me for just a moment. And if you have the ability to slide your shoes off and put them on the ground, that will help you arrive and be here. Now, the other thing that I know is that I don't need you to change about anything about where you are or how you're listening. Just notice your breath. If you're sitting and can take those shoes off, notice your body. If it feels right, let your shoulders soften a little bit and let your jaw unclench. Let yourself arrive. If you are one who celebrates Hanukkah or Christmas or Kwanzaa or any of the other holidays of light that show up at this time of year, there's always a little bit of stress that enters the body. We sometimes notice it and we sometimes don't. And often we want to jump straight into the next thing, the next thought, the next task, the next effort to make sense of what is next in our life. But I know from experience, and perhaps some of you do as well, that before anything meaningful can arrive, we have to arrive first. Today's reflection isn't about answers, it's about creating space. The difference between full versus spacious. So if you have arrived with me, take a deep breath in and release. And yet again, once more. There's a metaphor that many of us are familiar with. We often talk about whether our cup is half full or half empty. Being half full is usually framed as a good thing. It means we're grateful, we're capable, we're resilient, we're still standing, and all of that does matter, right? But I want to offer a slightly different perspective with a question today. Sometimes a cup can be full enough to feel okay and still too full to receive what could and wants to come next. What if the question mark isn't, is my cup half full or half empty? What if the question is there space in my cup? Take just a moment and let that question sink in. Is there space in my cup? Many of us live with our cups that are very full, overfull, full of responsibility, full of expectations, full of stories about who we need to be or how we're supposed to move forward. Neither of which is bad. It's just full. And when a cup is full, even with good things, there isn't much room for surprise or listening or grace. I recently was in a compassionate conversation with a woman who is doing a summit in January that I've agreed to participate on grief. And grief has a way of filling our cups. Grief can fill our cup with love, with memory, with loss, with coulda, shoulda, woulda. But grief can also fill our cup with hope if we allow it. Hope does not usually arrive loudly, and it often arrives quietly, unnoticed. But only when there's enough space does it truly land for us. Do we recognize it? With hope comes a form of listening. And listening then is one way grief can soften and hope finds room to breathe. I think I have shared previously on my podcast that there was a time in 2016 where I found myself unable to physically walk. And while I was suffering from breakdown of cartilage in my joints, there was something else that was causing me to not move as well. And it was grief. It was a full cup around the idea of grief, of lost dreams, of lost ideals, of lost people, of lost memories, memories that I had pushed over into a corner because I didn't want to confront them. And at that moment, when I found myself at the bottom of a hill in Central Park, unable to walk, hope and the remembering of stories I had shuddered away came up. And as I was thinking about today's episode, I was reminded of a moment from the night before my mother's passing. My mother and father at the time lived in Tucson, Arizona, and sometime after this time of year, in 2016, my brother called me and said, "I'm not sure how much longer Mom will be with us. If you would like to come spend time with her, sometime in the next month would be a good idea." So I planned and prepared to travel to visit my mother and my father the last week of January in 2017. And I want to share this moment in time with you, not to explain anything or to convince you of what I believe or convince you to believe a certain thing. I'm sharing it to speak to what happened when I allowed myself to be empty enough and present enough to listen. I had been with my mom and my dad on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on Friday, I discovered that the woman who stood up as my maid of honor in my wedding and who became like an adopted daughter to my parents passed away suddenly. The next day was the day I was to be leaving. And I think because of the loss of Diane and my mother's challenges and the fact that Dad knew I was leaving on Saturday, that Friday night, he said, rather than you spending the night at your brother's house, how about I'll spend the night there and you can stay here with Mom? So I did. That night, as I was lying in bed trying to sleep, I heard my mother speaking with someone. The interesting thing is that I knew no one else was present in the condominium. At first, I thought I was mistaken, but I sat up in bed and closed my eyes and listened again. That's when I felt a cool breeze move through my room. And I saw what I can only describe as spirits moving quietly around me, circling and present. I wasn't frightened, but I was calm and I was attentive. Something in me knew that I should get up and walk toward my mother's room. When I reached her, I noticed that she was sitting up and more aware than she had been the entire week that I had been with her. And it was as if she was having a conversation with her mother, her sister, and her father, all of whom had been gone for many years. I then witnessed her slowly settling back into bed and falling asleep. There is more that I could share, but what matters most about this was this moment required no effort on my part. I wasn't searching, I wasn't questioning, and I wasn't trying to understand. I was just simply present there in that moment. The next morning, when my mother woke up, she was in a little bit of pain, something she had not expressed all week. And I asked if she'd like to go to the hospital. She agreed. Something she had never done for all of my conscious awareness life. My mother was adverse to hospitals and doctors. She went in an ambulance, of which my father followed behind in the car, and I stayed behind to take a shower and finish packing because my flight home was that afternoon. Once I arrived at the hospital, she complained of being cold the entire time, even though she was under many warmed blankets and in a warm space. It was time for me to leave, and a family friend gave me a ride to the airport. And I remember just being aware that I needed to say something out loud that surprised me to this family friend. I told him that I believed that this was the last time I would likely see my mother. I remember that I was not dramatic. I wasn't afraid, and I wasn't telling this to him as a plea for help. I was just saying it matter of factly, and I did not know why I was saying it. I just listened to something that was inside of me that felt calm, clear, and steady. In that moment, I learned that listening doesn't always give us answers. Sometimes it gives us readiness. I have never tried to explain what happened that night. I only know that something becomes available to us when we are no longer full of questions agendas or the need to control what happens next. A full cup can help us survive, but a spacious cup can allow us to receive. And what we receive may not look like certainty or clarity or relief. Sometimes it looks like peace or trust or a quiet knowing that we don't have to force what comes next. The several years following that incident, I found myself looking for moments of quiet, looking for moments to empty my cup, to have it be half empty, so that I could allow other things to come in. It was 3 years later in 2020 that I found that this emptying of my cup and learning to be present was so important to me. So today's episode has not been about noticing what fills our cup. And tomorrow I'm going to be on the Feminine Frequency Festival on Facebook. It is a free festival open to anyone, mostly those that are women, because that's who is normally drawn to it. But if you are a man and would like to listen, you certainly may. Tomorrow, I will be sharing a 20-minute presence activation on how to practice receiving. Not through efforting, but through presence, through awareness, through moments of quiet. As we come to a close today, I invite you to pause with me for just a moment. And if it feels right, put your right hand on your heart and take a slow, deep breath in and out. You might quietly say to yourself, thank you for sharing. Notice whatever is here in this moment without trying to name it or change it. And when you're ready, let this moment close gently around you. There is nothing for you to carry forward. Something may stay with you, but there is nothing that you need to attach to or grab on to move forward. I will leave the link for the Feminine Frequency Festival in the show notes today. And I want to thank you, as always, for listening and for being here. I know I launched this podcast in July, and many of you found it long after July. There is a lot to go back and listen to, should you choose to. And as we move into 2026, there will be more that I will share, either with me, by myself, or where I've invited a guest on. I wish you blessings at this time of year when we are with families, sometimes trying, sometimes not. And as we head into the new year and we move from the Chinese year of the snake to one of the horse, I hope that you can shed the skin of things that don't feel comfortable or right and step into the grace and power of the horse. Thank you for being here. And if you have enjoyed this episode and believe that someone else should like and share and subscribe so that you know when my next episode will be.